Welcome to Through a Glass Darkly Radio. You're listening to us on United Public Radio. The intro music was, why am I not remembering this? Mark of the Doomslayer by Karl Casey at White Bat Audio. So, greetings, Earthlings. Good to see everyone tonight. We have the Hippocratic Oath. Actual giants or NBA tall? No, actual giants. Much taller than NBA tall. My eyes look weird tonight, probably because of the lighting, but that's fine. And Govind, good to see you, my friend. All right, so I'm just going to get right to it. I have plenty of content tonight, so I just want to make sure I get into it. Greetings, Spiderbite. Always good to see you. All right, so without further ado. Oh, by the way, the idea is mine. AI generated content. If you don't like that, I don't want to waste your time. This is the only piece of writing that I ever do that is AI generated. All my other writing does not use AI. All the other interviews, I don't use AI for interview questions or anything like that. Anyway, I do use them to generate images, but it's kind of about the extent. So anyway, here we go. Giants in History, Myth, and Archaeology, a comprehensive investigation. Across numerous cultures and time periods, there have been persistent stories of giants, human-like beings of extraordinary stature, appearing in folklore, historical chronicles, and even reported archaeological discoveries. From the biblical Nephilim and Goliath, to the towering figures of Greek and Norse mythology, to local legends of giant races in the Americas, tales of giants have captivated the human imagination for millennia. In modern times, these legends have intersected with archaeology in curious ways. Various discoveries of unusually large bones or skeletons have been reported around the world, often fueling speculation the giants once walked the earth. A particularly famous case centers on reports of red-haired giants allegedly found in Nevada's Lovelock Cave in the early 20th century, which have become a focal point of both local legends and fringe theories. This report provides a detailed and balanced examination of giants in both folklore and purported fact. We will explore global mythology surrounding giants, then focus on historical accounts and discoveries that have been claimed as evidence for giant humans. Special attention is given to the Lovelock Cave narrative, the Paiute legend of the Siteka giants, and the archaeological excavations in the cave, including what artifacts and human remains were actually found. We will scrutinize the archaeological evidence, bones, artifacts, and other data associated with giant claims, and discuss how scientists interpret these findings. Additionally, we will investigate allegations that mainstream institutions, I'm looking at you, Smithsonian, or other authorities have hidden, suppressed, or even destroyed evidence of giant human remains. Throughout both perspectives, the skeptical scientific view and the beliefs of those convinced giants were real are presented in a nuanced, objective manner. The goal is to remain grounded in credible evidence and academic analysis while acknowledging the enduring allure of the giant legends. All key information is supported at the end, which I'll probably not get into, but it's supported with citations to verifiable sources. So, giants in myth and folklore around the world. Legends of giants are virtually universal in human cultures, often serving symbolic roles or explaining natural phenomena. In many myths, giants are depicted as primeval beings, great heroes, or fearsome antagonists. A brief survey of giant lore in various cultural traditions provides context for the later discussion of purported real giants. First, there's ancient Near East and biblical tradition. The Bible refers to a race of giants called the Nephilim in the book of Genesis, described as offspring of, quote, sons of God, end quote, and human women. Later biblical narratives include giants such as Goliath, the Philistine warrior, famously slain by the young David. Goliath's height is given as 6 cubits and a span, which would be over 9 feet tall, though some texts imply a slightly shorter stature. Another giant figure is King Og of Bashan, whose iron bed is noted in Deuteronomy to be 9 cubits long, which is approximately 13 feet, implying Og's enormous size. These giants often symbolize the formidable enemies of the Israelites and underscore the might of divine assistance in overcoming them. Then there's classical mythology, both Greek and Roman. The Greek and Roman myths abound with giants. The Greek creation stories describe the Titans, primordial giant deities, and the monstrous gigantes, giants born from the earth goddess Gaia, who battled the Olympian gods in the Gigantomachy. Individual giants like the one-eyed Cyclops, for instance, Polyphemus, who was encountered by Odysseus, are depicted as huge, uncivilized beings. These myths likely have multiple inspirations. One theory holds that ancient people finding large fossil bones, so for instance, mammoth skulls with a central trunk cavity that resembles a single eye socket, could have given rise to legends of giant Cyclops. In Norse mythology, the Jotnar giants, a race of enormous beings often in conflict with the gods. For example, the frost giant Ymir is the progenitor of a giant lineage, and his body was said to form parts of the world. Giants in these myths frequently personify the untamed forces of nature or chaos that the gods, and by extension humans, must subdue. In South Asia, Indian epic literature features giants and demons of great size. In the Ramayana, for instance, the antagonist Ravana is sometimes depicted as a giant with multiple heads and arms, though descriptions vary. Buddhism and Hinduism speak of asuras or demons that can be gigantic. In later folklore of Sri Lanka and other areas, there are stories of ancient giant races. However, there are more in the realm of mythic history than archaeological report. In the Pacific and Oceania, many Pacific Island cultures have oral traditions of giants, often to explain unusual constructions or features. For example, on Easter Island, one legend holds that the massive Moai statues were removed by a race of long-eared giants, though archaeologists have explanations involving human engineering. Some Melanesian and Polynesian cultures have stories of giant ancestors or marauding giant tribes. In New Zealand, Maori legends speak of the Mero or Mohau, wild giants living in forests, though these could be mythic interpretations of enemies or even memories of the now extinct giant moa birds, who were just exaggerated into humanoid form. In European fairy tales, giants are common, and as they are in folk stories as well, from Jack's adversary in Jack and the Beanstalk to the Norse-Scottish figure of the Storworm, to local legends explaining megalithic structures as works of giants. In medieval lore, Gog and Magog were legendary giant guardians of London, symbolizing ancient British giants supposedly defeated by Brutus of Troy. Such stories often cast giants as either dim-witted villains or ancient builders of the impressive monuments whose true origin was unknown to later people. The Giant's Causeway in Ireland, a natural formation of basalt columns, inspired a legend that the giant Finn McCool built it as a bridge to Scotland, an example of how striking natural features could prompt giant myth explanations. Then there's indigenous legends of the Americas. Many Native American cultures include giants in their oral histories. For example, several tribes of the Great Plains speak of a race of red-haired giants or just giant people who lived long ago. The Choctaw tell of fighting a race of enormous cannibal people. The Navajo legends speak of the Starnake people, described as a regal race of white giants who were destroyed or went away. The Paiute people of Nevada have the story of the Siteka, red-headed cannibal giants, which we will explore in detail when discussing Lovelock Cave. Often these legends have a moral dimension, the giants' hubris or violence leading to their downfall, or serve to explain tribal relationships and ancient enmities. It is important to note that in many of these traditions, the term giant can be fluid. Sometimes it denotes a truly colossal being far larger than any human, while in other cases it may simply mean a tribe that was taller or stronger than average. Furthermore, myths of giants could be influenced by encounters with actual people of unusual height or by the discovery of megafauna fossils. For instance, settler folklore in North America sometimes misinterpreted mastodon bones as belonging to giants, and Greek scholars similarly speculated that large bones found in their lands were remains of giant humans or demigods. The presence of giant lore across the world suggests this is a common human motif, but distinguishing myth from reality requires careful analysis. So let's move on to historical reports of giant discoveries. Beyond folklore, history is replete with claims of giant human remains being found. Particularly from the 18th through early 20th centuries, newspapers and writers have reported discoveries of extraordinarily large skeletons. Many of these accounts must be viewed with skepticism, as we shall see, but they form an important part of the background that later fueled allegations of cover-ups. Here we survey some important or notable historical reports and their contexts. So there were early exploration accounts. As European explorers encountered new lands, they sometimes interpreted unfamiliar peoples in terms of legendary giants. A famous example comes from the voyages of Ferdinand Magellan in the 1520s. Magellan's crew landed in Patagonia, in southern Argentina, described meeting natives who were taller than themselves. One report claims they were so tall that our heads came only to their waist, likely an exaggeration. The name Patagonian giants stuck in European imagination. Modern analysis suggests the people were the Tehuelche, who are indeed quite tall, perhaps 6 to 7 feet on average, especially compared to a 17th century European of perhaps 5 feet 5 inches, but certainly not the 10 feet the phrase giant conjures. Similarly, Sir Francis Drake and others repeated tales of large-statured Patagonians. These were cases of relative perception, a significantly taller group seen by shorter observers, embellished by rumor into literal giants. Then there are Spanish conquistador and New World legends. Spanish chronicles from the 16th century also contain giant lore. One conquistador's account from Peru records a local tale of giants that arrived on the coast on big rafts made of reeds. According to this tale documented by a Spanish writer, these giants were so immense that their legs from the knee down were as long as an ordinary man's entire height. In the legend, the giants commuted impieties and were eventually wiped out by divine fire or a cataclysm. While obviously mythic, this story is noteworthy. It echoes some elements of the Paiute Siteka story of giants coming on reed boats, divine retribution, and suggests that giant legends were present in the oral tradition of indigenous Americans and noticed by early Europeans. However, no physical evidence accompanied these particular tales. They were simply recorded as folklore. Then there are the giant skeletons in colonial America. From the 1700s onward, European colonists in North America occasionally reported exhuming very large bones. Without an established paleontology, many assumed these were human. A famous case occurred in 1705 in New York when large fossilized teeth and bones were found. Cotton Mather described them as remains of giants mentioned in Genesis. These turned out to be mastodon fossils in later understanding. Such finds likely inspired or reinforced local myths of giant ancient people. Even President Abraham Lincoln, in an 1848 speech, alluded to the idea of, quote, the eyes of that species of extinct giants whose bones fill the mounds of America have gazed on Niagara, end quote. Lincoln's poetic remark shows that by the mid-19th century, it was a common popular belief that the mound builder cultures who erected large earthworks in the Ohio and Mississippi valleys were associated with a race of giant humans now vanished. This belief often carried racial undertones. A so-called lost race, distinct from Native Americans, was credited with advanced ancient achievements, a concept now thoroughly debunked and recognized as part of colonialist pseudo-history. Then, of course, there were the 19th century newspaper sensations. Newspapers in the 1800s unencumbered by modern fact-checking. Modern fact-checking, folks. Modern fact-checking. More like modern fact-checking by the intelligence community to make sure that the narrative is the correct narrative. But anyway, we'll let that one pass aside. But unencumbered by modern fact checking, that probably means it's more accurate in my not really, but anyway, I digress. Unencumbered by modern fact checking, published numerous claims of giant skeletons unearthed. It was not unusual for a local paper to report a farmer finding a human skeleton 8 or 9 feet tall in a burial mound or cave. For example, a report from 1845 in the Tennessean described a skeleton even 8 feet tall found in Williamson County. Dozens of such reports exist from across the United States through the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Many were likely exaggerated measurements, bone mixes, or outright hoaxes meant to draw attention. One of the famous hoaxes of that era, the Cardiff Giant, wasn't a skeleton at all, but a carved gypsum statue of a giant that was falsely presented as a petrified prehistoric giant. It drew crowds of speculators until it was revealed as a fake. The popularity of the Cardiff Giant in similar exhibitions like giant humans in sideshows, for example, the display of Edward Beaupre, an 8 foot 3 inch man with gigantism, whose corpse was exhibited, fed public fascination. Then there are the mound builder giants and scientific debunking. The idea that giant people built ancient American mounds was addressed by early archaeologists. Alex Hrdlicka, a physical anthropologist at the Smithsonian, investigated many of the giant claims. In a 1934 publication, he systematically debunked the purported giant skeleton discoveries, attributing them to measurement error, exaggeration, or a misidentification. Hrdlicka noted that skeletons exhumed by amateurs often appeared giant simply because the remains were disarticulated or the long bones not understood correctly. He famously wrote that the finds of giants owed more to the will to believe than to scientific reality. Indeed, some skeletons described as enormous in local news turned out to be those of large extinct animals, i.e., megafauna like giant ground sloths or mammoths mistaken for humans. The 19th century myth of a prehistoric giant race in America was intertwined with the myth of the mound builders being separate from Native Americans, an idea now completely refuted. The mounds were built by the ancestors of modern indigenous peoples, and no giant race was involved. Similar claims globally. The United States was not unique. Other countries also had these giant tales. In 1890, in France, an archaeologist and cryptozoologist named Georges Vacher de Laponge reported finding bone fragments in a Bronze Age tub at Castelnau that he claimed were gigantically oversized. From a piece of humerus, tibia, and femur shaft, he estimated an individual perhaps 11 feet tall, quickly dubbed the Giant of Castelnau. No further evidence ever confirmed this, and recent analysis suggests Laponge's bones may actually belong to a large Ice Age cave bear, not a human. In the early 20th century, giant skeleton reports came from places as far afield as India. A recurring internet hoax shows a photo of an enormous skeleton being excavated in India, which has been proven a doctored image in the Middle East. So for fanciful claims of giant skeletons in ancient tombs or the Arabian desert. These two have never been substantiated by any museum or scholarly paper. Often they proliferate in paranormal or conspiracy literature, but without verifiable proof. In summary, historical reports of giants often enjoyed sensational press, but fell apart under scientific scrutiny. By the early 20th century, scientific consensus was that no evidence of a race of giant humans had been found. The tallest human skeletons reliably recorded, aside from a few pathological cases, were within the upper range of normal human height, around 7 to 8 feet, not the 10 plus feet that true giants would require. Nevertheless, these historical claims form the background for why many continue to believe giants existed, and they set the stage for the Lovelock Cave story, where legend and archaeology intriguingly intersect. The red-headed giants, or the red-haired giants of Lovelock Cave. Legend meets archaeology. One of the most famous giant-related legends in North America is that of the red-haired giants of Lovelock Cave. This case is especially notable because it involves a well-documented archaeological site, real Native American folklore, and a tangle of conflicting narratives about what was found during excavations. Here we delve into the Paiute legend of the Lovelock Giants and the actual discoveries in Lovelock Cave, examining how facts have been interpreted or misinterpreted over time. So we'll start with the Paiute oral tradition of the Siteka. The northern Paiute people, who have inhabited the Nevada region for millennia, have an oral history about a group of enemies known as the Siteka, also spelled Saduka or Saiduka. The name Siteka means tool eaters or tule eaters in Paiute, referring to the fibrous tule reed that grows in marshes. According to the stories, this group used rafts woven from tule to navigate Lake Lahontan, which was an ancient lake that once covered much of Nevada, and escape attacks. The Paiute narrative, as recorded and later published by Paiute author Sarah Winnemucca Hopkins in 1883, describes the Siteka as cannibalistic barbarians who menaced her people. Notably, Winnemucca mentions that this enemy tribe, had reddish hair, and that after they were defeated and exterminated, Paiutes kept some strands of this red hair, passing it down as an heirloom. She even had a dress trimmed with this hair, a unique family heirloom as a testament to the war. In Winnemucca's account, the conflict with these people ended in a decisive battle at a cave. The Paiute oral history holds that allied tribes cornered the remaining Siteka in a cavern, demanded their surrender, and when refused, proceeded to kill them by shooting arrows and setting a fire at the cave entrance, either burning or suffocating those inside. The final battle site, according to the story, is what we know today as Lovelock Cave near Humboldt Lake, Nevada. In the legend, none of the Siteka survived. They were wiped out due to their wickedness, particularly their cannibalism, which made them morally repugnant to the Paiutes. It's important to clarify that early versions of the Paiute story do not heavily emphasize the Siteka being giants in stature. They are described as a different tribe, barbarians, very possibly physically larger than the Paiutes, but not necessarily enormous. The detail about red hair is prominent. The element of great height, giants, appears to have been amplified in later retellings by others, or particularly non-Paiute storytellers or journalists. Even so, in many secondary accounts of the Siteka are referred to as red-haired giants, and the characterization has stuck in popular imagination. As we will see, the idea of giant stature may have been reinforced when large skeletal remains were reportedly found in the cave. From an anthropological perspective, some researchers like Loud and Harrington, who excavated Lovelock Cave, expressed uncertainty whether the Paiute legend was truly an historical memory or an explanation devised after seeing artifacts from an unknown earlier culture. The Paiute description of the Siteka having different tools, spears versus arrows, and distinctive artifacts could indicate a cultural memory of encountering a group, perhaps an earlier band of people, or even an internal metaphor. In any case, the legend was well known among locals by the time Euro-American settlers arrived. And then we look at the archaeological excavations in Lovelock Cave. Lovelock Cave is a dry cave, actually a rock shelter, about 20 miles south of Lovelock, Nevada. It was formerly near the shore of Humboldt Lake, a remnant of Lake Lahontan. Because of the cave's dry conditions, it proved to be a treasure trove of ancient artifacts and biological remains, exceptionally preserved over millennia. The cave's significance was first noted by John T. Reed, a mining engineer in Lovelock who heard the Paiute giant legend around 1886 and was shown the cave by local natives. Reed tried to interest academia in an excavation to no avail. In 1911, however, the cave's riches came to light by accident. Miners named James Hart and David Pugh began digging out the cave's thick deposits of bat guano, which was prized as fertilizer. I can't imagine how pleasant that little excavation was, and discovered Native American artifacts in the process. Their guano mining operation removed several feet of deposits from parts of the cave and reportedly destroyed or discarded some artifacts, which was common in that age of hasty exploration or hasty exploitation. News of the artifacts eventually reached the University of California, and in 1912, archaeologist Llewellyn L. Loud was sent to perform a proper excavation. Loud, working for the Museum of Anthropology, extracted approximately 10,000 artifacts and specimens from the cave between April and August 1912. The findings were so numerous that a second major excavation led by Mark R. Harrington of the Museum of the American Indian, with Loud's assistance, took place in 1924. The combined results were eventually published in 1929 in a monograph, Lovelock Cave, by Loud and Harrington. Among the spectacular discoveries were finely woven basketry and mats, hunting tools, shell beads, animal bones, and even food remains, offering a glimpse of a rich archaic culture. Radiocarbon dating done later on some materials indicated human use of the cave from around 1500 BC up through the first millennium AD. This culture is now referred to by archaeologists as the Lovelock culture, believed to be ancestral to or related to the Paiute and other native groups in the area. Two particular discoveries garnered a lot of attention in the context of these giant legends. There's the cache of duck decoys. So in 1924, Loud and Harrington uncovered a bundle of 11 duck decoys made of woven tule reeds and feathers. These decoys, used by ancient humans to attract waterfowl, are remarkably well preserved. Some even retain feathers. They are dated to roughly 400 BC to 100 AD and are the oldest known duck decoys in the world. Today, the original decoys are housed at the Smithsonian Institution in the National Museum of the American Indian, and replicas are displayed in Nevada. This finding demonstrated the ingenuity of the cave's occupants and showed a direct link to the Tule theme in the Paiute legends. The Tule plant was significant both in reality and legend, used for decoys and said to be used for the giants' rafts. And then there were the human remains, mummies and skeletons. The excavators did find human remains in Lovelock Cave, some mummified bodies and skeletal fragments. The cave's dry guano and soil helped preserve a number of bodies which were naturally mummified or dried out rather than deliberately embalmed. According to various reports, roughly several dozen individuals were represented by the remains. Loud's formal report notes about 60 average height mummies were unearthed, although that figure may include many fragmentary burials. A notable early description comes from miners Hart and Pugh. They recalled finding several mummified bodies with distinctly red hair during their guano digging, including one giant male skeleton. In correspondence later cited by Loud, and miners described one striking mummy of a man 6 feet 6 inches tall with red hair, found around 4 feet below the cave deposit surface. There were also 4 or 5 other mummies with red hair. The ones appearing female were much smaller, around the size of a modern petite woman. The tall male had been wrapped and buried with some ritual. One account mentions a grass rope around his neck and binding around his feet. The 6'6" individual, giant perhaps relative to other bodies, is likely the source of later claims that Lovelock Cave contained giant skeletons. Indeed, in a 1935 biography of John T. Reed, who was the local enthusiast who had long championed the cave's exploration, it is proudly stated, quote, "One of his great finds was a skeleton exactly 7 feet 7 inches tall. It is one of the giant men of an ancient race," end quote. This shows how even in the 1930s, some were framing the Lovelock remains as an ancient race of giants. It must be stressed that the official archaeological assessment did not find 8 to 10 foot humanoids in the cave. The best documented large skeleton was the male, about 6.5 to 7.5 feet tall, notably tall, but within human possibility, especially for a well-nourished individual. Many other skeletons were significantly smaller. A later University of Nevada study, re-examining bones from Lovelock Cave, concluded the giants were about 6 feet tall, not up to 8 feet, as claimed. This aligns with what anthropologists expect. Most hunter-gatherers of the region would be medium stature with an occasional tall outlier. Still, in the early 20th century, a 6.5-foot mummy with reddish hair was sensational, and news of it traveled fast. So from fact to legend, were giants actually found? As anthropologists published their findings, an interesting phenomenon occurred. The scientific reports were often brief and couched in careful terms, while popular retellings, newspapers, magazines, and local gossip embellished the story. The legend of Lovelock's red-haired giants took on a life of its own, blending genuine data with mythic elements. So we'll start with the red hair. The discovery of mummies with reddish hair was trumpeted as confirmation of the Paiute legend. Indeed, the Paiute explicitly said the enemy had red hair, and here were ancient skulls with red or auburn locks. Scientists have offered a mundane explanation. The pigments in dark hair can be chemically altered by long burial in certain soils, turning hair a rusty red. In other words, the people may not have been redheads in life at all. They could have been typical Native Americans with black hair that became discolored over centuries. This is known to happen. Many ancient Egyptian mummies, for instance, have reddish hair today due to decay of pigments, despite Egyptians not being red-haired. Some of the Lovelock hair samples, however, might have genuinely been a lighter brown or reddish hue originally. We cannot be sure. Regardless, the presence of red-haired mummies was a tantalizing link to the legend for many. Then there's the gigantism claims. While archaeologists only documented heights up to around 7 feet, local news stories began to claim much larger sizes. A frequently cited example is a 1931 report in the Lovelock Review Minor newspaper. In February 1931, a large skeleton was found weathered out of a dry lake bed near Lovelock. This skeleton, measured in situ by an amateur, who was Reed himself, was about 7 feet 6 inches tall. Just a few months later, in June 1931, another skeleton was unearthed in the same area near the Humboldt lake bed at a place called Toy. Reed and others recovered it, and this one was sensationally claimed to be 9 1/2 or possibly 10 feet tall. Its femur bone was reported at 18.5 inches, which actually does not correspond to a 10-foot human. It would suggest perhaps a 7-foot tall person, as Reed's earlier 7-foot 7-inch skeleton had a femur around 17.5 inches. The discrepancy hints at error or mismeasurement. Nevertheless, stories of an 8.5-foot mummy and a 10-foot mummy from 1931 entered the lore. The 10-footer was said to have been wrapped in a gum-coated fabric reminiscent of an Egyptian-styled mummification, a detail that fired the imagination, suggesting a sophisticated burial. There is scant evidence today of these super-tall skeletons. No such remains exist in any museum. What we do have is Reed's notes and secondhand accounts. In fact, when a professional anthropologist, Shelley Brooks, later examined the Reed collection of bones from Lovelock and surrounding areas, she found no skeletons taller than 5 feet 11 inches, indicating Reed likely overestimated heights due to not accounting for missing joint cartilage and other factors. Brooks concluded Reed made an honest mistake by measuring bones against his body without realizing how the hip joint articulates. The femur's head fits into the hip, so you can't just measure femur length and extrapolate without adding the missing portion. This scientific review strongly suggests that the 8 to 10 foot giants of 1931 were more legend than reality, perhaps around 6 to 7 feet in actuality. The third claim is some of the artifacts as evidence of size. Believers in the Lovelock giants often point to artifacts that imply large stature or strength. One such item is a 15-inch long sandal found in the cave. A sandal that long would correspond to roughly a U.S. shoe size 20 or 21, extraordinarily large, though not impossible. Such feet occur in modern people of extreme height. Indeed, a 7+ foot tall person could have feet that size. Archaeologists did find several sandals. Whether one was truly 15 inches hasn't been verified in the literature. We have, but it's mentioned in secondary sources. Another suggestive find was a handprint on a cave boulder that some claimed was abnormally large. If these anecdotes are accurate, one could speculate that at least one individual of unusual size lived among the Lovelock people. However, it's also possible that the sandal was ceremonial or made for some other purpose, and that the giant handprint is either exaggeration or clearly not of human origin. The Humboldt Museum in Winnemucca, Nevada, which held many Lovelock artifacts, notes that while the cave's human remains were slightly more robust, they were not beyond normal size parameters. This is a clear statement that nothing defied the ordinary human range. Then there's evidence of violent end. One aspect of the Paiute story, the burning of the giants in the cave, appears to have some archaeological corroboration. Excavators did find signs of an ancient fire at the mouth of Lovelock Cave, a thick layer of burnt material and soot near the entrance. Charcoal and burned bodies were also present, suggesting that a significant fire occurred there long ago. Radiocarbon dating on some burned reeds placed a fire event around 1850 plus or minus 100 BC, though multiple fires may have happened. Archaeologist Llewellyn Loud noted one pit containing a calcined or burned human skeleton beneath burnt debris near the cave mouth. It seems the cave did witness people being burned, though whether this was intentional human-on-human violence, cremation, or accidental fire is not fully known. The Paiute legend would say it was the final extermination of the Site-Ka by burning. Archaeology cannot prove the entire story, but the alignment of the fire evidence with the legend is intriguing. It's a rare case where folklore and dig data meet. If the legend was purely fabricated, it's uncanny that the cave entrance shows signs of a large fire in antiquity. This lends a bit of credibility to the idea that the legend might indeed preserve a hazy memory of real events, albeit likely embellished. In summary, the Lovelock Cave excavations undeniably found important archaeological treasures and some human remains, but no unequivocal 10-foot giant skeletons were documented by the professionals. The largest mummy was around 6.5 to 7.5 feet tall, which is tall but not superhuman. The giants of Paiute legend, if one chooses to interpret them literally, could have been these tall individuals, or the term giant could have referred more to their fearsome reputation and perceived difference. Modern Paiute accounts sometimes take the story symbolically as a tale of good overcoming evil, or of their ancestors defending their land. The scientific view holds that Lovelock Cave was a dwelling or burial site for normal-sized humans of the Lovelock culture and later northern Paiutes. Any suggestion of giants is likely misinterpretation of the evidence. Yet the legend refuses to die. It remains an enduring mystery in popular culture, often cited by those who claim ancient giants once existed. To this day, visitors to Lovelock can learn the story of the Site-Ka. The nearby Humboldt Museum formerly displayed some of the skulls and bones from the cave, including a couple of so-called giant skulls. But in recent years, they have removed human remains from view out of respect and legal compliance or repatriation under NAGPRA. This removal has unfortunately fed into conspiratorial whispers that the evidence was hidden, when in fact it was returned to the Paiute descendants as required by law. We will address the broader theme of alleged suppression of giant evidence in the next section. All right. We're pretty far along, and it's not even 8 o'clock yet. So I think this is a good time to see what folks' reactions are thus far. All right, let's see. Oh, Pavlos, I just saw your super sticker. Thank you very much, man. I really appreciate that. That's fantastic. Thank you. All right. So I had to recognize that one first. So I didn't put my star on things at the beginning. So okay. Hey, Benton, good to see you. So there are actually like 10 spider bites that are in 10 places at once. Yeah, so laugh out. Spider Bite replies, laugh out loud. Benton, I just left Rob's. It started doing my head in. Tim Beck's writing, we are the giants, big, lumbering, capable, tech savvy, compassionate, and vengeful. Maybe so, Tim, maybe so. Spider Bite writes, Daniel Boone was as tall as a mighty oak tree, and Paul Bunyan was a giant, they say. Spider Bite continues, also giants in their industry or trade and knowledge. Yeah, also Spider Bite writes, imagine a Maasai next to a pygmy. Pavlo says, hello, you giants. Tim Beck writes, Tom Gould's comic Goliath is a gem. Simply put, reason over emotion. Please read it. Benton Ryer wrote, what if we are the giants and in the past there were people who were like 18 inches and we ate them all? Has everyone thought of that? It's possible, but I don't think people have found bones. Whereas with giants, they found bones. In many cases, they they found mammoth bones or cave bear bones or giant sloth bones and kind of misidentified them as human giants. Yep. Tim Beck writes, friendly giants, nice guys, finished last. Okay, Spider Bite writes, laugh out loud. No, there are dwarfs and miniature people in the bush. Yeah, pygmies are very small, but they're, I don't know if they're 18 inches though. Big green giant was friendly. Yo ho ho. Green giant. All right, that's Spider Bite. I don't know if people recognize that commercial. Okay, Spider Bite writes, there was that tiny little woman from American Horror Story. She might have been a remnant of the past. Maybe. But Tim Beck said cannibalism existed. Well, yeah, it still exists today. There are people, some tribes will still eat you. Spider Bite writes, we probably ate her family and ancestors. Spider Bite writes, does anybody remember the show Land of the Giants in the 1970s? I do not, but it kind of sounds familiar. Hippocratic Oath writes, it's a tender subject. Tim Beck writes, dysgenics, degeneracy, de-evolution. He continues, research Dayaks of Indonesia, headcounters, no one race has a monopoly on, the Geno word. Spider Bite is writing, what was the average height of a Paiute? They may be really short. No, I think they're kind of average height. Hey, Oracle of Ralphie, good to see you. She writes, hello, fellow seekers. Gray Owl, all snap, is it Sunday already? Hey, Sean, instead of loading up my playlist with Morrissey and the Smiths tracks as of late, I transitioned to another one of my favorite bands, the Happy Mondays. Good to see you, my friend. Good to see you, Gray Owl. Paiute is, I'm going to spell it phonetically like I would in the military. Papa, Alpha, India, Uniform, Tango, Echo. Paiute. Paiute. Duck Decoy is, in fact, isn't that what Duck Dynasty is about? Like that whole series? Tim Beck is writing Charlatans UK, Smiths, How Soon Is Now, 1985, Southern Death Cult, Good Times. Yeah, it's one of my favorite songs is How Soon Is Now by the Smiths. Okay. All right. UFO Paranormal Radio writes, my dad was in the Korean War, never talked about it. Oh, interesting. So Fred writes, I hope there's a part 2, including the Aztec and Nahuatl history of the giants. I'll have to look into that. Spider Bite writes, they rub red ochre into their black hair, or in their black hair. Scott Ian says they were redheads. from Hyperborea. Scottish giants were red-haired too, is what Spiderbite said. Gray Owl writes, at this point, I think it's safe to assume that even unicorns and rainbows are likely real. It's all real. The complete opposite of what control narrative is. I don't know about that, but it's certainly reasonable to believe crazy stuff like that, given how much the powers that be have lied to us. Gray Owl writes, hey, Sean, maybe next week's subcategory could be unicorns and rainbows. Kill me. Yeah, I don't know about that. Okay, Spiderbite writes, there is a giant club somewhere, and they have genuinely giant bones and artifacts. It could be. Again, I'm working off ChatGPT 5, and they probably worked in a bunch of the censorship in the newest version. Gray Owl. Fred writes, Gray Owl, rainbows are 100% real. Yes, I concur. Yep, that's exactly Oracle of Ralphie. That is exactly how you spell Paiute. And by the way, I think I'm pronouncing it right. I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing it right. So Gray Owl writes, yes, I imagine many precious and significant historical artifacts are stowed away in the private collections of billionaires and other eyes shut SOBs who think themselves somehow worthy. Fair. Yep. Oh, I'd never put 2 and 2 together. You're absolutely right, Oracle of Ralphie, because that's where the Utes are. They're in Utah. Yeah. 100%. Okay, so Tim Beck is writing EMP manipulation, radio frequency is loose control, imprinting, conditioning, placebo, Rorschach is base marketing for future generations, peculiar, yes, implausible, no. Okay, Spiderbite wrote, watched a video of lightning. It seemed to be literally arcing off the rainbow. It definitely acted different on the rainbow. Scott Ian, yes, probably. The Smithsonian probably drew heavily from Smithsonian accounts, because I know that they're on a mad dash, because the Smithsonian believes that this is misinformation gone haywire, and they've been trying to tamp down on this quote unquote conspiracy theory for a very long time. Who knows? It might be. But I suspect the change. Hey, Johnny Topside, good to see you, man. Good to see you. Okay. Gray Owl writes, I would put forward the proposition that in the totality and complexity of reality, we are possibly the anomaly. We are the alien, if you will, to a much more informed Shakespearean play acting out all around us. All right, Logan Clark writes, I know some Native Americans that swear up and down they have seen the little people. Yeah, I think when I interviewed, God, why can't I remember his name? But about the Navajo, he kept talking about the little people. I mean, even the Irish talk about the little people, right, with leprechauns and whatnot. Hey, Joe Fox, good to see you, man. Okay. Spiderbite, you can't just say that without any context. Spiderbite writes, they are disappearing psychics. You got to say more. You can't leave everybody in the lurch like that. All right, Jerome and Rusty, Canadian classics. Green Sleeves is a show song theme. Nice. Yeah, watch out for the Smithsonian, Benton, is what Spiderbite's saying. Yep, Johnny Topside Fairies, the Fae, whatever you want to call it. Roger Claiborne is writing, a theory is dinosaur bones and prehistoric bones is the origin of giant tails. Yeah, or just mastodon bones, There are definitely little people in the Blue Mountains in Australia, Spiderbite writes. Oh, nice. Logan Clark writes, Sean, Matthew Brown followed me on Twitter after something. Yeah, he's following me too. I mean, I don't know if that's good or bad, but Fred writes, Aztec history is that they came from North America and giants were the ones who built the pyramids. Aztecs joined and killed them off. or all off. Okay. All right, I'm going to get back to our regularly scheduled program. We still got plenty of time, so we're more than halfway through. So we shall return. Okay. So we're going to talk about allegations of suppressed evidence in the Smithsonian cover-up. Despite the lack of scientifically verified giant skeletons, and that's not fair, right? If you hide them, nobody can scientifically verify them. So let's just put that out there first. But okay, let's run with this. Despite the lack of scientifically verified giant skeletons, the narrative that giants once existed, but the evidence has been covered up, has gained traction in some circles. At the heart of this theory lies the Smithsonian Institution, the venerable museum and research complex in the United States. Countless online articles, viral images, and even some fringe books have accused the Smithsonian and occasionally other authorities like the Vatican or governments of deliberately hiding or destroying giant human remains to maintain orthodox views of history. Here we examine these allegations critically, focusing on the Smithsonian angle. So let's start with the origin of the cover-up. They're calling it myth, but let's see what they say. I don't know if it's a myth. The idea that the Smithsonian is covering up giant skeletons appears to stem from a combination of historical incidents and modern hoaxes. So the role of the Smithsonian in debunking early giant claims. As noted earlier, Smithsonian scientists in the 19th and earlier 20th centuries actively investigated and debunked giant skeleton reports. They were often the recipients of bones and artifacts found across the country. For instance, many mound excavations were done or sponsored by the Smithsonian's Bureau of Ethnology. In doing so, they frequently concluded that purported giants were either misidentified bones or within normal human variation. The Smithsonian's curators Alice Herlicka was vocal in 1890 to 1930 that no giant skeletons had been confirmed. This stance, while scientifically found, put the institution at odds with local folklore. Some local amateurs, like those who fervently believed in giants or an extinct race, felt the Smithsonian was dismissive or too quick to label things as bare bones or hoaxes. Over time, a resentment brewed in some quarters, spawning a conspiracy theory that the Smithsonian must have received giant skeletons and then made them disappear to avoid rewriting history. A key point here is that the Smithsonian did collect thousands of skeletal remains of Native Americans, as did other museums, many from mounds. Most of these, however, were of ordinary size. Later, laws like NAGPRA in 1990 required such remains to be returned to tribes, so they are no longer in museum storage, a fact twisted by some to say the Smithsonian hid or lost them. In reality, repatriation is a respectful return, not a cover-up. Then there's the 2014 admission hoax. The most influential catalyst for modern cover-up claims was a fake news article published on December 3rd, 2014 by a website called World News Daily Report. The article's headline proclaimed Smithsonian admits to destruction of thousands of giant human skeletons in early 1900s. It went on to weave a tale that the U.S. Supreme Court had forced the Smithsonian to release classified documents proving a deliberate destruction of giant bones to protect the evolutionary timeline. The story cited a fictional organization, American Institute of Alternative Archaeology, suing the Smithsonian and alleged whistleblowers who confessed to a decades-long cover-up, with skeletons ranging from 6 to 12 feet tall being destroyed. This sensational story was entirely false. World News Daily Report is a satirical site. Their own disclaimer says it's fictional. However, the article's content was copied and shared widely on social media as if true. Even as of 2022, Reuters noted that posts repeating this story were still going around, duping people. Snopes.com, Snopes.com, totally credible, and Reuters Fact Check have thoroughly debunked the article, labeling it satire and explaining the red flags. The Supreme Court case never existed. Such a high-profile case would be public record if real. That's fair. And AIAA and the AIAA organization is fictional, and the supporting photographs of giant skeletons included in some posts were doctored images or misidentified pictures of known people with gigantism. One widely shared photo, for example, shows an archaeologist beside an enormous skull. It was actually an entry in a 2002 Photoshop contest to create a fake giant discovery, which then got passed off as real in chain emails. Another photo attached to these claims showed the giant showman Edouard Beaupré's body, which has nothing to do with hidden archaeology, as he was well known in life. In short, the 2014 hoax poured gasoline on the smoldering conspiracy theory, convincing many that the Smithsonian admitted to something when in fact it did not. Then there are earlier rumors and perceived secrecy. Even prior to 2014, alternative authors had accused the Smithsonian of hiding evidence. Books like The Ancient Giants Who Ruled America, The Missing Skeletons by Richard Dewhurst in 2014 compile old newspaper clippings and insinuate that because the Smithsonian collected these findings and later didn't display them, they must be hiding them. However, an alternative explanation is far more plausible. Many of those newspaper reports were either hoaxes or misidentified bones, like mastodon femurs, which, when sent to the Smithsonian, were recognized as non-human or not gigantic, and not as gigantic as claimed. Thus, nothing sensational was kept, only normal skeletons or animal fossils were cataloged. The Smithsonian did not get out of its way to publicize every routine find, so in time, these donations faded from memory, which conspiracy theorists interpret as deliberate suppression. A relevant historical footnote is that in the late 19th century, there was a bone rush where fossil bones of prehistoric animals were sometimes missold as giant human bones to museums. The Smithsonian, being a scientific institution, would test and often conclude they were animal. This further disappointed those hoping for giants. So then there's the Smithsonian's response and scientific consensus. The Smithsonian Institution has repeatedly stated that it has no evidence of any giant human remains in its collections, and certainly no policy to destroy evidence. In response to the viral claims, a Smithsonian spokesperson flatly denied the allegations as false. Indeed, the notion that an institution would destroy valuable specimens is counter to scientific practice. Any unusual human remains, especially 12-foot tall ones, would be intensely studied and would actually make a scientist's career rather than threaten it. The absence of credible scientific papers on giants is telling. If even one bona fide giant skeleton existed, scientists would be publishing it with great interest, not hiding it. I don't believe that. I think scientists have not published a lot of things because of fear of reputational damage. It's worth noting that, oh, goodness sake. It's worth noting that many legitimate scientific investigations into unusual skeletal remains have occurred and are well documented. For example, when extremely tall skeletons are found, say 7 to 8 feet, scientists often identify them as individuals with gigantism, which is a hormonal disorder, or just tall individuals at the upper human range. Cases of pathological gigantism in antiquity have been confirmed. So there's a Roman skeleton from the 3rd century AD found near Rome, measured about 6 foot 8 inches, and showed signs of a pituitary tumor in the skull, making it the oldest known case of gigantism. Another suggested case is an ancient Egyptian, possibly a pharaoh of the 2500 BC 3rd dynasty, Senacht, whose remains implied a height of around 6 feet 1 inch, tall for that era, and possibly a gigantism case. These finds are published openly. What has not been found, despite extensive paleoanthropological work, is any skeleton of a truly giant hominid outside the Homo sapiens range, say over 9 feet tall with appropriate skeletal robustness. All human remains belong to species that, while variable in height, do not approach the fantastical proportions of legend. Modern science explains that extreme height in humans, much beyond 8 feet, comes with health problems and is genetically rare. It doesn't propagate through a population to create a whole race of giants. Then there are misidentifications that likely account for many giant bones claims. For instance, a large femur bone of a prehistoric elephant can look vaguely like an oversized human femur. Untrained discoverers in the 1800s often assumed giant human before experts correctly identified the species. The giant of Castelnau, as mentioned earlier, likely was a cave bear bone, and many American reports were very similar or similarly like animal remains. Hrdlicka in 1934 noted that not a single actual museum verifiable skeleton over 8 feet had been found in the thousands of skeletons dug from mounds and ancient sites. That holds true today. It's also critical to observe that multiple fact-checking organizations fact-checking in 2025 is 100% horseshit. But I'll read this anyway. I'm not putting any credibility in any fact-checking organizations because they're basically narrative control organizations. They trace how the myth persists on the internet due to people not recognizing the satirical origins of the recycled fake images. National Geographic also weighed in, explaining that tales of giant discoveries were repeatedly triggered by hoax images and that no such discovery has been verified. Finally, consider the Smithsonian is not the only repository of historical bones. Every country has museums and universities doing archaeology. If giants existed, evidence could surface anywhere from China to Peru, yet no academic institution or credible scientist outside the alleged Smithsonian conspiracy has produced a giant skeleton either. This global silence reinforces that giants are not being hidden. They simply have not been found in reality. And of course, there's other allegations of hidden giants. Beyond the Smithsonian, some conspiracy-minded authors have cast suspicion on the Vatican for allegedly hiding giant bones or remains of biblical giants like Goliath in its archives, a claim with no evidence, or on governments for allegedly covering up giant encounters. One story popular on the internet tells of a Kandahar giant supposedly killed by U.S. Special Forces in Afghanistan in 2002. This is considered a modern myth with no military confirmation. These tales, while colorful, suffer the same problem: no verifiable evidence. They often rely on anonymous sources or are published in dubious outlets. Let me actually opine on this one. I know many of my friends were veterans in Afghanistan. Not a single one, when I asked them, heard any stories like this when they were over. It wasn't even in the rumor mill. So I think the Kandahar giant, I think it was just a fabricated story just for amusement. But I could be wrong. Maybe it was hush hush and nobody knew about it and they kept it close. But I kind of agree. I agree with that statement there. Another recurring claim is that many giant skeletons were found in specific areas, such as the Ohio Valley or the Smithsonian's own digs in the Grand Canyon in 1909, and then vanished. A closer look usually finds that these stories originated in imaginative news articles or outright fiction that later became cited as fact by giant enthusiasts. For example, a 1909 Arizona Gazette article told of a fantastical discovery of Egyptian artifacts and giants in a Grand Canyon cave, but this appears to have been a journalistic tall tale, as the Smithsonian has no record of the person named or the expedition, and the story's details strain credulity. In sum, while the idea of a cover-up is appealing to some, since it provides an explanation for why mainstream science doesn't acknowledge giants, the simpler explanation is that giants have not been found because they did not exist as a distinct race. The evidence put forward from them either has mundane explanations or has evaporated under scrutiny. The Smithsonian, far from hiding knowledge, has actually helped debunk. Oh, that's nice of them. They helped debunk false claims. It's very generous of them. And educate the public on legitimate anthropology. Unfortunately, in the internet age, a fake story can travel far before the truth has a chance to put its boots on. The 2014 satire and its ongoing circulation exemplify this. All right, so scientific evaluation, a reality check on giants. To conclude our investigation, we step back and assess the notion of giants in light of scientific knowledge from anthropology, biology, and archaeology. There's human skeletal limits. Humans, Homo sapiens, vary in height due to genetics and nutrition. The tallest known individuals in modern times have reached 8 to 9 feet due to pituitary disorders. So there's Robert Wadlow at 8 feet 11 inches. These cases are extremely rare and often come with frail health. Wadlow needed leg braces and died at 22. Good Lord. No known human has been taller than 9 feet with a healthy, robust body. The physics and biology of the human form impose constraints as height increases. Weight increases faster, cubically, than bone cross-section, which increases squared, leading to structural and circulatory challenges. Past a certain threshold, bones would have to be disproportionately thick to support a giant's weight, and the heart would struggle to pump blood up a huge body, already an issue for 8-foot giants today. If a population of 12-footers existed, their skeletons would look very different from normal humans, perhaps much more robust, and would probably constitute a new species. No such distinct skeletal morphology has been found in the fossil record of humans. The largest hominid fossils we have belong to species like Homo heidelbergensis or Homo erectus that would be around 7 feet tall in some cases, but not enormously beyond modern human ranges. Then there's the human fossil record. The human fossil record, incomplete though it is, has yielded many bones and skeletons from various eras and places. We have remains of small statured humans, e.g. Homo florenziensis, the hobbit species, about 3 feet tall. So commenters were right. There were humans that were about 3 feet tall. We had little people, which show that humans can have populations outside the average size. If there were truly ancient populations of giants, say averaging 9 to 12 feet tall, we would expect to have at least some of their remains or tools adapted to their size. We have not. Even at Lovelock Cave, the tools and artifacts, bows, duck decoys, sandals, do not suggest an outsized people. A 15-inch sandal is notable, but not beyond a large modern man's foot. And most other sandals and moccasins found were smaller. The duck decoys and baskets are of normal dimensions for use by average-sized humans. In other words, the material culture at known giant sites doesn't reflect giant users. This articulation and misperception. Scientists caution that partially incomplete skeletons can appear larger than they were. This was demonstrated in recent cases described in a 2024 study. An allegedly 7-foot tall pre-Columbian skeleton featured on a TV show was later analyzed, and when accounting for the gaps between disjointed bones, the researchers found the person was likely around 5 feet 2 inches in life. Bone spread apart can mislead the eye, a phenomenon likely at play in many modern giant reports. Similarly, bone size alone can mislead a thick-legged person or someone with certain pathological conditions might have unusually large bones that suggest greater stature than reality. Give me a moment before I irreversibly lose my temper. Oops. Why is this still up? Okay. I can't believe I went through that with the thing still up, but just give me a second. All right, sorry about that. I'm still going to get a lot of noise, but I hopefully set things into motion. Okay, where was I? All right, then there's disarticulation and misperception. We got through that. Bones spread apart can mislead the eye, a phenomenon likely at play in many amateur giant reports. Similarly, bone size alone can mislead a thick-legged person or someone with certain pathological conditions might have unusually large bones that suggest greater stature than reality. Then there's double rows of teeth and other myths. A common trope in giant lore is that skeletons were found with double rows of teeth. This sounds exotic, but dentists and anthropologists note that there is no known genetic trait that produces a neat second row of functional adult teeth in humans. Often these claims likely stem from misunderstandings. For example, if a jaw's teeth were loosened and fell into the wrong positions, or if the individual has some dental anomaly that was exaggerated in retelling. The Lovelock skeletons did not have double rows of teeth reported. That motif comes mainly from old mound reports and is considered spurious. In fact, one of the Lovelock labeled skeletons was remarked to have a perfect set of teeth, not one diseased, excellent teeth, but a single row as normal. Then there's cultural context of giants. Many scholars interpret giant legends not as literal records, but as symbolic narratives or cultural memories. Hold on. I got to go for a second. So my apologies. I will be right. All right, I'm back. All right. Cultural context of giants. Many scholars interpret giant legends not as literal records, but as symbolic narratives or cultural memories. A conquered or ancient people might be remembered as giants to emphasize their strength or difference. For indigenous narratives like the Paiute Siteka story, one interpretation is that it encodes an ancient conflict between people, perhaps the Paiute or their ancestors in another group that could have been a different ethnicity or simply a rogue band of their own. Labeling them cannibals and giants served to vilify and mythologize them. After generations, the story enters the mythic realm where precise facts matter less than the lessons or identity aspects. This is not to say the story is false. Rather, it operates on a mythic level, even if inspired by some truth. The actual remains in Lovelock might be from people who had slightly taller stature or a few tall individuals giving a kernel of truth to giant in a relative sense. And their scientific attitude. Science remains open to new evidence. Really? Okay. If tomorrow a credible discovery of an 8-foot prehistoric human skeleton were made, it would be studied intensely and could prompt a revision of understanding of human variation. I really doubt that. But extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence. And so far, the evidence for giants has not met even extraordinary scientific standards. Photographs of big bones, anecdotes, and myths cannot establish the existence of a giant race. Physical bones in a lab can, and those have yet to appear in any peer-reviewed context. The cases we do have in labs, like the Roman giant with gigantism, are celebrated and published, not hidden. This indicates there is no institutional reluctance to acknowledge a giant visual. The reluctance is only to accept unsubstantiated claims. I don't know if I agree with that. Conclusion: giants and the balance of legend and evidence. The enduring fascination with giants speaks to something fundamental in human culture. Giants represent the other and the extremes of power, of fear, of mystery. They loom large in our stories, as challenges to overcome or as reminders of a mythical golden age. The worldwide distribution of giant legends, from Paiute caves to Greek Isles, from Bible to Norse sagas, ensures giants will never fully leave our imagination. However, when we move from imagination to investigation, the picture changes. Archaeological and physical evidence for actual giants, humans significantly taller than known human extremes, remains elusive and unverified. In the case of the Lovelock Cave, what we find is the convergence of a dramatic indigenous legend and some intriguingly archaeological details that can be and have been interpreted through a fantastical lens. A careful, objective review shows that the Lovelock giants were not true giants. They were likely normal people, perhaps adversaries of the Paiute long ago, whose story grew in the telling. The cave yielded great treasures of knowledge, but not the bones of 10-foot monsters. The largest remains were large by human standards, around 7 feet, but far from requiring any non-human explanation. The allegations of giant cover-ups, particularly the oft-repeated Smithsonian conspiracy, crumble under scrutiny. You can't prove a counterfactual. You just can't. So I don't know what to believe with this whole giant thing, but it's not as black and white as kind of the AI is trying to lead us to believe. They have been traced to misinterpretations and even deliberate hoaxes. Institutions like the Smithsonian have no rational motive to hide such paradigm-shifting finds. They absolutely do. On the contrary, any curator would revel in displaying a genuine giant skeleton if one existed. The absence of such displays is not due to hidden warehouses of bones, but due to the absence of the bones themselves. In our era of open information and global collaboration, it is increasingly implausible that a discovery of that magnitude could be suppressed by any single entity. It's totally believable, actually. That being said, the value of the giant narratives should not be simply dismissed as lies. They are part of our cultural heritage. For the Paiute, the Siteka tale is an important part of their historic identity, describing a victory and the moral that comes with it. For those drawn to alternative archaeology, the giant stories represent a yearning for mysteries beyond the current scientific story. Engaging with these respectfully yet critically is key. One can appreciate the richness of the legend while still applying scientific method to claims about physical remains. In conclusion, the objective view is that no credible evidence has yet confirmed the existence of a race of giants in our world's past. The Lovelock Cave findings, once stripped of exaggeration, align with known indigenous peoples of the region rather than a mythical superhuman race. Allegations of evidence suppression are not supported by documentation when scrutinized, whereas the skeptical explanations, hoaxes, misidentifications, exaggerations have strong supporting documentation. Science, of course, remains open to new data. It has no agenda to deny. It has no agenda to deny giants if compelling proof arises. But after centuries of searches, that proof remains as hidden as the giants themselves. The legends of giants lives on in storytelling and perhaps in our subconscious hopes that the world still holds extraordinary secrets. It occupies that boundary between the known and unknown as researchers and enthusiasts continue to explore, for example, new expeditions in remote caves or re-examining old museum collections. It is not impossible something unexpected could turn up. Until then, we must content ourselves with giants of metaphor and myth rather than flesh and blood Goliaths. As one science writer aptly put it, when it comes to Lovelock and other giant tales, just remember giants have never existed and never will. A stance supported by all current evidence. And yet in the human imagination, they will undoubtedly continue to exist, tall as ever, striding through the pages of folklore and the margins of speculative history. Yeah, I'm not buying it. I ever since they switched from ChatGPT 4 to ChatGPT 5, the narrative machine has had its influence on a lot of what's being reported. So that's kind of where I stand on this. So let's see what folks have to say. Oh yeah, three-piece in a pod are brown, lavender, and hazelnut. And Clark, I might add. Gray Owl says. Tim Beck says, still reading Lavenda. Wow, mind disbanding. Yeah, he's a first class researcher for sure. So Spider-Bite writes, they deny giants, they deny dinosaurs. Then where do the bones come from? Whales? Yeah. Well, I don't think anyone's denying dinosaurs. Okay. All right, so Fred writes, Joe McMoneagle also told about the Natural History Museum hiding stuff in their basement that was shown to him. Yeah, I believe that. Who knows what they're hiding, but okay. Spider-Bite wrote, they probably ground the bones up and put them in the fertilizer blood. Yeah, yeah. Look, I'm not saying the Smithsonian did hide any evidence, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did, if they suppressed that stuff. So Scott Ian is writing, Cliff High has a story about an uncle of his who took a job during the Depression, disposing of giant bones by throwing them into the ocean from a ship. Roger Claiborne says Aztecs do have legends of giants losing favors with gods, and all but 7 destroyed by a flood. Those 7 built a pyramid according to the Aztecs. Good money for the time, no questions asked. So Chalk Krithihydra writes, Bigfoot is about the size of a giant. Yep. Yeah, that's a good point, Oracle of Relphi. That's probably could be from where the uncanny valley phenomena comes from. So Spider-Bite writes, the Victorians did a lot of weird stuff. Who knows what they did with them? They would have found many, I'd imagine so. Yep, could be. Yep, follow the money, Oracle Relphi writes. Okay. So Gray Owl writes, Scott Ian, a key ingredient in keeping us inside the fishbowl, as it were, is that all evidence of genuine historical record be removed from public consumption. Okay, Fred's right. The Smithsonian Panama was found to be basically a huge grooming operation. These people aren't 100% professionals who love science. They're just people. Yep. So Roger Claiborne is saying little people do exist. Got some from Romania living across the street from me. Okay. So Gray Owl's writing, Sean, how's the Cali weather in your quadrant as of late? It's been so cold up here in the socialist bloc of Canada last week or so. I saw a politician putting his hands in his own pockets. It's actually been rather hot. I mean, it's August where I live, so it gets pretty rough. Okay. So Gray Owl is writing, I am fascinated lately with a thought experiment of the cross phenomenal awareness bell curve that may or may not be at play across a wide spectrum of different X-rays and otherwise cats. All right. He continues, for example, I ponder if the interdimensional style X-rays that I now have in my Rolodex are aware of the G3 gray squids that are abducting people and vice versa. Okay, just racing through these comments. What's this? It's okay. Sean family is more important. I just have one particular family member who is like conspicuously, egregiously loud. Okay. All right, I'm just going through this. So Gray Owl writing, the Smithsonian debunk argument is pretty weak. Even if there were giants, they were probably only 6 or 7 feet tall. Laughing my ass off. So Gray Owl is writing, I recommend along the lines of these topics of controlling narrative and suppression of knowledge that individuals here in chat may have looked at Mark Gober. Gray Owl is writing, he's knocking on the door of where my thinking is, whereby we need a new model of reality rather than continue trying to force all the square pegs into the round hole of our current models. Yeah, Matt Gober, yes. I don't know. I'm not familiar with him. So, over the last week, lots of owl sightings for me, by the way, after doing the whole ritual thing. So I can pull up one day in particular. Let's see if I can quickly find something. Okay. No. Oh, maybe is that within 2 weeks? Yeah, it's within the last 3 weeks. So before I start playing let's start with this one. Just give me a moment. Oh, here we go. Let me see what that looks like. Oh, just add it to stage. All right, you see this guy back here? That is your owl. Just give me a second. All right, same day. Okay. And just to, that's probably not sufficient for people. So let me share another one. What am I doing? Okay. All right, same owl. Just speed this up a little bit. Yeah, you're not going to see. That's a little bit better. See his eyes right there? Yeah, look at those talons. These guys are beasts. Okay. And then it gets weirder. Let me see if I can find it. This is on August 13th of this year. So I just haven't had a chance to show people this. Let's see. Okay. Screen. Then his buddy showed up. Have you ever seen two owls in one place at the same time? Oops. Of course, I didn't add that to stage. Did you all even see the last one? Let me just start that one again. I don't know if you could hear that, but all right. So let's remove that. Let me go back to the last one because I don't even know if I shared it properly. Let's see what this one is. That's a good one, but I'll get to that. So you saw in the last one that there was that owl over my shoulder, and okay, your screen, window, boom. Okay, let's just make sure I'm actually sharing it. Nope, I'm not. All right, see that? That was the owl behind me. Let me just fast forward this a little bit so you can see him playing with his talons. I'm going to see his eyes right there. There we go. Look at that. Look at those things. Okay. All right, and then the last one. Again, this is all from the same day. This one's even more impressive. So I hate how it immediately goes to the picture, but then it doesn't immediately. So you can see two of them now. All right, here we go. Anyway, I swear to God, I see more owls in the last 3 years than I've seen in my entire life. So, all right, let's look at some of the comments. Okay. So Tim Beck writes, I can't describe my synchronicities. Sean, he would be a good guest and is doing podcast interviews. I'll shoot you something on him. Yeah, please do. Yeah, yeah, seriously. Okay. All right. Roger Claiborne's writing, I've been imitating and talking to crows in my neighborhood for a while now. And just recently, they have begun flying up close and talking back, winning them over slowly. Also, in real life, no computer in nature. Tim Beck writes, very cool, Sean. Okay. Great. So Roger Claiborne writes, great horned owls eat cats, probably hunting cats. Laugh out loud. Could be. Yeah. They're handsome, handsome owls. I've never seen two of them like that together. That's a first for me. And by the way, the second one flew to the roof. I caught it when it was flying to the roof to join the first one. No, that's not my house. That's like a neighbor's house, but it's just like right across from me. Oh wow, yeah. I think that was a juvenile. I don't know if that was a mate because it was apparently this time of year the juveniles still haven't kind of quite left the nest and they still beg. So I think the smaller one, I mean, it's almost barely detectably smaller, was just kind of begging for food. And then it eventually flew away while the original one just kind of stayed behind. So very, very, very strange. I see these guys, and then I think I saw one earlier this week, the same roof. So I also found an owl feather, which apparently you're not supposed to keep because of the Migratory Bird Act of 1918. So if the feds catch you keeping an owl feather in your house, it is a $15,000 fine, according to ChatGPT. ChatGPT was very, very clear to warn me not to keep that. I also found a white tipped raven feather the very next day. I don't know what that means, but that seems somewhat synchronistic to me. I don't know in what way, but very, very strange. Very strange indeed. So, and that was when I was doing that ritual thing that I still have to do tonight in the darkness. But, uh, and the other day too, there was the red-shouldered hawk that landed on that same roof, and then several minutes later, a great horned owl landed there. No, you can identify. It's clearly an owl feather. Like there's no Tim. It started. I had one. I think I saw my first uh, great horned owl as a silhouette in Lone Pine, California, in 2021, and then in 2022 it started to really pick up. So there was the one in 2023 in September of 2023 that landed on my back fence and allowed me to approach it. So every time you see in my merch shop, like there's pictures of Marvin the owl, that's the owl that landed on my back fence. I have 1,000 photos of that guy. So in like my promos at the end of my videos, that's the same owl. It was very weird that I could approach it that way. Let's see what else. Let me see how we're doing tonight. Oh, all right, well, that's sort of annoying. All right, here we go. I found it. All right, well, we just broke 15,400, so that's good. It's still taking forever, but this month growth in the channel actually accelerated a little bit, so I've been happy about that. It's nowhere near what it needs to be for the channel to grow at a rapid clip, but it's growing much faster than it has recently. So that is wonderful news. So we'll see how it goes. But I think part of it might be that we're about to go into saucer season. So that is something that Rich Geldrich came up with, which is generally we have all these UAP sightings this time of year. So 'tis the season of the saucer. So get ready. Oh boy. Okay, so Gray Owl writes, I recently forced down an episode of Vetoed, aka Vetted, due to Karl Crusher being on tap. Not trying to be critical, but the host needs to increase his inventory of adjectives. Yeah, well, I mean that channel's not it's not for people with high IQs. It's kind of a sensationalist channel that kind of leverages other people's content for what it's worth. I'm not saying that as to disparage it. It's just what it is, right? So you're not going there for rocket science. Okay, so Gray Owl writes, everything he remarks on, he calls interesting. Interesting this. Oh, that's interesting. Boy, oh boy, I found out. Wait for it. Interesting. No, he's in the big leagues. According to YouTube, he's in the big leagues. I am not in the big leagues based on subscriber count and views. So, yep, Scott Ian is writing, A1 Atlas is coming to do something. Yeah, my episode on that with John Brandenburg, I think pops on September 22nd. So I put it a little bit closer to when the event actually happens. So Roger Claiborne writes, I've always talked to wild birds. Once taught a mockingbird a bunch of new tunes. It was awesome when it incorporated my whistles in its morning songs. Tim Beck, I appreciate you. He writes, I didn't say this. I'm not mean, but I'm critical. I prefer not the style of Vetted. I'm not neutered. That's an interesting way of saying something else. I appreciate that. Gray Owl writes, I find that this podcast is very well known among informed people, intelligent people. It's almost a blessing that we're not too watered down with people that are still debating the big question. I wonder if U.S. UFOs might be real or not. Yeah, it's marketing the narrative, but good for him, right? Like, if with low effort you can garner that many subscribers, that's good for him. Who knows? It's not a nuanced channel. It's like you don't go there for nuance, and that's all I'll say, right? But and I shouldn't talk about other accounts like that, because what he's doing is working. What I'm doing is not working. So, right, that's an objective statement, right? Maybe it's working in the long run, but right now it's not working. So the other thing, I don't know if I've told people, I think this has kind of trickled out, but I am now also a host for the Future Forecasting Group. So I've hosted 2 targets thus far. I not only host the episodes, but I also do the analysis. Let the remote viewers share information with me. So, and then I kind of consolidate it and present it. So definitely check that out. I just recorded an episode with Dick Algier today. It's kind of a co-production. So he interviewed me, I interviewed him. So I got to think of a way to do that so that people don't, come on to my show seeing Dick Allgaier and just saying, I came here to see Dick Allgaier. I didn't hear this host talk about himself. I didn't want to see that. This is the host is talking too much. So I expect to get, so I have to package it in a way that warns clowns like that he's interviewing me too. But, anyway. Yeah, I like him a lot too. Yeah, so I'm going to be a host on the Future Forecasting Group, like on some of their videos. So, and I'm like, I'm not. It's not like a volunteer thing either. Like I am being remunerated for it. So it's pretty interesting stuff, and they're tapped into some pretty interesting folks. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. Irony is he knows he's a clown show. I'm not gonna. I appreciate the sentiment, but I'm not gonna pile on. I'm gonna try to be more. I'm gonna try to be professional. But I appreciate the audience feedback, and we'll steer clear of that style of presentation. Yeah, thank you, Johnny Topside. I appreciate it. By the way, no impact on this show. In fact, it will help this show. And I encourage you all to subscribe to that channel as well, because that's part of it. There's a cross pollinate, although they have like at least over 3 times the subscribers I do. So it's doing me more of a favor than me kind of being on their show, but still, nevertheless, you should check it out. It's a definitely good show. Yeah, I think they get all the targets from paying subscribers, so I'm not going to violate that sort of thing. If it were my show, I could have a little bit more leeway, and maybe after I've been there for a while, I will. But at this stage, I just got to kind of land the plane on the aircraft carrier a few times, and then see where it goes from there. Yeah, it's definitely a lot, and it helped that I knew Daz and Edward Reardon well enough, because I think they recommended me. Like I didn't apply for it or anything like that. They just reached out to me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in doing this?" So, but it's only going to help the channel. the veto spear. What does veto stand for? I thought it was like veto a bill, but VITTO sphere. I don't know. What does that mean? Please elaborate, Grail. I'm very curious about what the veto spirit is, because the only image I'm getting right now is like Vito from from the mafia. Yeah, Daz is very they're all very talented. They're actually scary accurate too. And they're accurate in different ways. So I don't want to say much because I don't know how much is aired. I've done 2 targets so far, and I've just finished my analysis of another target. We just have to record the episode. Yeah. It's a special show for sure. Like kind of special ed. I'm going to stop. It's not professional. This is a professional podcast. Actually, we're not professionals here either, but what was I doing? Oh yeah. So it's like everything I'm clicking on is like the wrong thing. So I just have to do something really quickly. Some tricks I learned about working with YouTube, with monetization and whatnot. So I don't have ads running during the live stream, but I've learned that if I wait for the live stream to end, YouTube takes forever to add them, and then I never, but if I add them in the middle of the live stream, generally YouTube doesn't have enough time to put them in, but the moment I walk away from it, it'll automatically start the ads for people who weren't watching it live. So that's just another technique, I guess. All right, let's see. All right, Gray Owl writes, they got it all over there, Sean. For every shape and size, they will veto your veto. Roger Claiborne writes, to teach a mockingbird new tunes, you got to copy its songs back to it in the morning, but add a few of your own with it here and there. Interesting. Short bus specialized agitprop. Indeed, Tim Beck, indeed. Gray Owl writes, I loved Lavenda's comment on your latest interview with him. Quote, America is a haunted house with an attic and basement we are too scared to go into, end quote. Well said. Yeah, I think the subtitle to Sinister Forces, the first volume, is America is a Haunted House. So anyway, what do folks want me to cover kind of going forward? Any particular guests that I should get on, or even guests that I should have on again? I guess I still need to reach out to Morehouse, but I'm glad I reached out to Lynn Buchanan again. Those episodes are doing great. Awesome. Peter Lavenda's episodes are doing awesome. The O'Leary brothers, those episodes did awesome. I've had like a string of those. Gillis episodes always do awesome. So, and I think Brandenburg episodes do awesome too. So we'll see how the lifting the lamp Frater Eleftheria does. He's the guy that Matt Brown not quoted, but showed his materials on Twitter. So I interviewed him for the next 2 episodes that are coming up. Although I might push Dick Algeyer's episode in there soon, so it is synchronous for when they put up. This is crazy, for when they put up mine. So anyway, I'm trying to think there's anything else crazy. I had a weird dream last night that my thesis advisor was talking about Malmstrom. So if you see any weird stuff at Malmstrom Air Force Base in the next few weeks, you let me know. It was just weird. A former Secretary of Defense was like talking about Malmstrom. And just so you know, I only drink this once a week because it's like eating fat pills. I started eating 1 steak a day, and that's it. And then taking a multivitamin. And I've lost 30 pounds doing it. I'm not joking. This is the way my genetics are. One weekend I had a pizza. That's it. That's all I ate. I had a medium pizza. The next day I gained 4 pounds. So there's something about my metabolism that it processes meat very efficiently. It processes everything else very sluggishly. But I still have a lot more weight to lose. Yeah, it's a fantastic eating regimen. It's like the easiest diet ever, and it works better than any diet I've ever had. It's just, you don't even have to exercise. It just burns off. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. All right, that's creepy, Scott. You got to say more because you are freaking right. That's correct. How do you know that? Well, I mean, obviously you somehow, it has something to do with metabolizing meat and not metabolizing carbohydrates, but say more, please. I'm very interested. Thank you, Johnny Topside. He just says, keep up the good work. I appreciate you. Thank you. Scott, you got to say more, man. I'm sitting here on pins and needles. I mean, don't make me chat GPT you. O types require meat and process it well. Yeah, I process it there. And the other thing too is you're not hungry. You just eat that and you're not hungry. It's amazing. Okay, Gray House writing, yeah, my Scott genealogy is humming when I go on a diet of turnips and ground meat stuffed in sheep stomach. Yum, yum. Oh, yeah. Plus a wheat dram to wash it down. Yeah, Logan Clark writes, I must be O-type. Yeah, I don't know. Scott, you got another question, man. You started this. What about B? Fast Mama Jamma wants to know, what about the B type? What should they be eating? What should they be processing? Inquiring minds want to know. Oh, you know what? I should put this. B is the most common. Let me put a banner up. Yeah. I didn't say this, and I should have said that at the beginning. If you think you are subscribed, please go and check to make sure that YouTube did not unsubscribe you. And number two, if you are not subscribed, but you've been here for a while, you enjoy the content, I would really appreciate if you subscribed. I would love to do this for a living. I'm doing a lot of other stuff on the, I'm doing all sorts of things to kind of generate income for the family, but also to have optionality for full independence. So right now, I don't have full independence because there's a lot of other stuff I would love to do if I had more time and more money. And the more money thing, I would probably invest in on-site shoots for strange locations. I would absolutely go nuts with that sort of thing. Because A, it's fun, and B, I think people would be interested. But I'm nowhere near that yet. But it's something I would love to incorporate into this channel. So, all right, I think I just missed about 4 comments. Let's see. Yeah. Oh, so I didn't say it. I just read it myself and selfishly just assumed that the people listening could read as well from the radio. All right, so Scott Ian is all I know is O because I'm an O. I forget the rest. So Fast Mama Gemma saying the negative is the most sus. Logan Clark says B processes baby blood best. Oh boy. Still like organic oats. Yarg. Yeah. Roger Claiborne, I'm an O as well. Do you have similar like meat processing capabilities? All right, I'm not saying the Yahtzee's word. Can have anomalies with ribs. I guess. All right, I think we are near the cusp of the end of this episode. We got 1 minute left. So again, also please like. See how many likes in the last minute we can just jack it up and play with. Roger Claiborne, yep, don't like that. Look, I loves me some carbs. I just drank a whole thing of liquid carbs, but I do that once a week. And then I just revert back to the pure protein and fat diet. Graham writes, does anyone else find it strange that we are not allowed to say words? Yes, we all find it very strange. Yeah, thank you, Logan. He writes, well done, Hazlett. I appreciate that. All right, Ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap. I hope you enjoyed the dialogue about giants. A little bit of narrative pushing by ChatGPT 5 because they locked that one down a little bit. But I think you know where I stand. I'm open to them being or to that being 100% wrong. I definitely think the fix is in. That's my I drink chocolate vegan powder. Yeah, I can't. I want to get that. They should ban the word the. Yeah, what did Clinton say? That depends what the definition of is or something like that. I can't remember. But anyway, oops. And the word interesting. All right. Good night. God bless. Hit that like button. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. If you are subscribed, hit that subscribe button. You know what to do. So I appreciate you and see y'all next week. Thank you again. Good night. God bless. Have a wonderful week.